Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Devotion to Writing, a channel devoted to helping you overcome writer's block, awakening creatively through writing, and helping you cultivate a more deep and consistent writing practice because I think this is the key, that devotion to sitting with ourselves daily with our thoughts and our emotions and our experiences and our memories and our dreams and getting these things onto the page and seeing where they lead us, seeing what beautiful things we can create. And really, this is always my focus is when I'm writing, when I'm creating, it is what beauty can I make? What joy can I find in this? That's what I've been leaning into more and more as I proceed in my own creative, artistic writing practice is to get to the page and to see what awaits me there, what joy and what beauty. So I kind of want to talk along those lines today. If you're struggling to write, I know some people say to me that they struggle because they're trying to write about something that has happened in their past, and they just can't seem to get it right. So I want to speak about getting it right, not getting it right, in fact. There are no mistakes in writing or in creating. There are only experiences. We are able, that is, to edit, to recreate, or to retell the stories as we ourselves come to understand more deeply the richness and complexity of our being alive. And this happens right on the page. We write one version of what happened. If we're not satisfied with it, we write it again and rewrite it again. In that sense, we are constantly re-seeing and retelling the things and pulling out the things that we want to accentuate and lessening the things that we no longer wish to accentuate. Here's a quote from Maria Popova that I read today. There are as many possible stories to tell about an experience as there are ways to paint a cloud or to love. I love that idea. There are as many ways to tell about an experience as there are ways to paint a cloud or to love, meaning there are various ways of seeing, of doing this, of colors to use, say, going back to the cloud, perspectives to use and to do this. Your life is not a static historical account. It is an evolving, an ever-evolving narrative. Could completely change tomorrow, the way that you see things. As you change, your narrative necessarily changes. A problem I think that we often have is that we get locked into a version that we think is true, and we make that concrete, and it limits us. Even I think what we could do proactively is change the narrative. And as you change the narrative, even a single word, your life changes. And that single word can go out, spread out, and infect the entirety of your story and indeed then your life. Now, I remember the first time that I became aware of this. I was about 8 years old. And I don't tell many people this because I've always been somewhat, it's interesting. I've always been a little bit embarrassed or shy about telling people this story, but I used to play football in my backyard against imaginary opponents. Just me throwing the football, catching it, running, tackling myself. I had a complex history, though, with this, in that I told myself a very complex story that I had invented about the teams I'd played for in the past, about injuries that I had sustained and come back from, about championships that I'd nearly won, but in the final moments lost. And then finally, in the midst of this season that I was engaged in, perhaps I would win. I had this innate sense, I think, even at that time, of the power of narrative, of story, to build and release tension, and to propel us. I even narrated the games as I ran and tackled myself in the yard. It's a 5-yard pass and he catches it and, runs for another 3 and down he goes. What a great tackle, etc. It was very fun. I enjoyed it a lot. But then the revelation one day came in the midst of doing this, that as I was narrating in real time this imaginary game, I had this realization that what I was really doing all the time in my life, and I remember it stopped me. I I was telling about my family, my friends, my school, my own emotions, my likes and dislikes, always. I was narrating this. Oh, it's a cold day. It's so cold. I don't like the cold. Oh, I hate school. I don't like my math teacher. Math is so hard. On and on, this interior narrative. And I realized I was the narrator, just like I was playing this imaginary game on this field in my backyard, was narrating the events, the imaginary events. I was, in reality, narrating every step of my life, what I liked, what I disliked. I told myself a story. And then I realized I could choose how to tell this story. I arranged the details. I could emphasize certain experiences in order to shape the overall meaning. And therefore, I realized at that moment that it was in my power to change the language and focus of my story. Going back to Maria Popova's quote, there are many, in fact, infinite ways to tell about an experience. And so I think I began at that moment to strategically ask which narratives in my life I chose to live by, which I wanted to accentuate, and those which I no longer cared to tell myself. Now, this doesn't mean we're making up stories, that we're inventing things that didn't happen. It really is just means that we have the ability to rework the story that we are living and to, again, accentuate the stories that we want to propel us forward and to is that even a word? De-accentuate? What word am I looking for? That we don't give as much credence, say, to the stories that we no longer wish to tell ourselves. So our stories serve us. When we are writing, don't forget this, that your stories serve you. So you're writing about your life, your people, and people have often told me that when they're writing about their life, that it's painful, that it's too dark, and they don't want to go there. And I say, yeah, that may be true. That is true. There can be very traumatic, painful memories, experiences that we have. And I don't want to go too far down this path because I'm not really here to do therapy, but I just want to say that there's always language that we choose. We choose the words to use to tell our stories, even the most painful stories, even the darkest stories. We are the ones who are giving the language to these stories. We are choosing which words to use. We aren't locked into the story, to the history. We are, in fact, the authors. And that means we are the authority. We are the authority. And so, to our writing, how does this apply to writing? How does this apply to getting to sitting at the page and writing? It just means that don't be locked into an experience and a point of view of that experience. You can write from different points of view about the things that have happened to you, about anything that you wish to share and to put into the form of a story. You can change how you write about it. Don't be beholden to a way of telling, because when we get locked into a way of telling, we really, as I mentioned earlier, we start to limit ourselves. We begin to encase ourselves in, I am this. You are not. You are not your story. Your story can change. You are more than that. You don't change. So you can rewrite yourself. You are allowed. And sometimes the idea that we have to get something down exactly as it happened, I think that can block us when we're writing, especially about our pasts, of course. We busy ourselves then with, is this true? Did this really happen? What are the details that I'm remembering? And we start to question, we get into this whole mind thing happening, projections of what did happen and what didn't happen, and is this truth, and can I say this? Meanwhile, you're just one version of the experience. That's it, merely one version. And anyone else who was there and shared that experience has their own version. So you just have to own yours, and yours can be multiple. Just be open to retelling it. And so this is really the prompt today, and this is what I wanted to assign to you, is to take a moment right now. You can pause this video after you get the prompt if you want and write it and then come back, but take a moment to think about a formative story. And I think it's important that you use a story that has been with you and that you retell to yourself and that you tell to others, because that formative story, meaning it's concretized, it's pretty solid in the way that you tell it. And I want you to write it down, this story that you've returned to many times in your life. Write it down as you frequently tell yourself or tell others, and just get that down. That's the first part. And once you've done this, I want you to go back to that story, to what you've just written, and I want you to rewrite it from the perspective of another person, or perhaps even a thing, like a fly on the wall, or a piece of furniture, or something else that was in the environment, that shared the environment where this story, this event takes place. Could be a sibling, could be a parent, could be a pet. Then I'd also like you, after you've done that second writing, is to go back to the original version, and I want you to comb that story for the word choice, and to see how you color that story with the words that you use. Some of these words can be quite habitual, and I want to tell you this about me, a story about me, to illustrate how habitual this can be. For years, in telling about my father, my childhood, and my father not being in my life, I would say he abandoned me. And well, okay, abandoned, that's a pretty striking word. True, it was true enough, but what's true? I felt abandoned as a child, not having my father around, certainly, but that power of that word, abandoned, completely shaped how I experienced myself. I was someone who could be abandoned, right? And that's not a very important thing then. It's not a very important person, a person who could be abandoned. Did I believe that about myself? I certainly must have on some level. But as I grew, that word, abandoned, no longer sufficed. And I think this was about that same time that I was throwing the football to myself in the yard and running down the sidelines and into the end zone and celebrating. I realized that a word like abandoned, and he abandoned me, that sentence, that construction, was a construction. And one that I didn't need to allow prominence or importance, that I was making up this narrative, that I had constructed that sentence, he abandoned me, and I could change that. And so I think I have dropped that word, abandoned, and it changed my relationship to myself. It changed my relationship with my father. Now here I said I wasn't going to do a therapy session. I think I just did therapy for myself. But it shows, I think, the power of the words that we hold in our stories, and which then we allow these stories to form us, right? We form us, and see we repeat these stories so often. And so get to the page. Keep discovering your stories. This is one of the most beautiful things about writing, and is one of the most, it's why writing is such a wonderful tool for creativity, for self-discovery, is that when we put something on the page, that it gives us some perspective, and that perspective gives us a little distance. And the distance then, the distance allows us to see it and manipulate it. And writing what we've written down then becomes just material, becomes malleable, as clay is malleable, as a movement is can be changed in dance, say, or as paints can be repainted or covered up or painted over, right? Mixed. You are the fashioner of your brilliant life. You are the fashioner of your brilliant life. That's what I wish to convey today. There are many, many ways to tell your story. Get to the page, tell your story, discover your stories. There are zillions, they are infinite. Discover them and edit them, change them, retell them, make them sing differently, tell them from different perspectives. It's endless, endless, and it's beautiful. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Share it with others if you think you think it might help them cultivate a writing practice. Get over their writing blocks. That's why I do these videos. I've always said, I can't teach you how to write. I already know, I know that you already know how to write. But I think what we don't know how to do is how to overcome the resistance, the blocks we have about writing and get to the page consistently. And that's what I hope I can help you with. To that point, I have an online Zoom workshop coming up soon. It's November the 12th. It begins. That's a Wednesday evening. We're going to meet for 5 weeks from November the 12th through December 10th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. New York time. So I'm in New York time zone, 7 p.m. to 8:30. If you're elsewhere, do the calculations. I hope it would work for your schedule, but it's a Wednesday evenings for 5 weeks. You can go to devotiontowriting.com to sign up for that. If you want to get through your writing blocks and awaken creatively, this is a really wonderful, supportive community in which to do this, and this is your chance. I'd love to meet you there. I would love to see you there and to hear your writing. As always, if you write something and you'd like to share it with me, you can put it in the comments, or you can contact me at devotiontowriting.com. I'd already mentioned, please subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I hope that you write deeply today. I know that if you do write, you will write beautifully, because beautiful, beautiful is what you are. Blessings.